Yep.
This is a good another Purim episode.
'Tis the season.
'Tis the season. You know, Purim. Purim, the main theme of Purim is what? Let's kill the Jews. Pretty much, again, like most of the times in Jewish history, everybody wanted to kill the Jews. You know, back then, so the Persians wanted to kill the Jews. Nothing new there. But here's the good news for everybody out there. Rabbi Freeman says, no more. Nobody wants to kill the Jews anymore.
Hey.
Well, congratulations, Mazel Tov. We're done with that. I'm going to tell you, I differ. I differ a little bit. I'm just going to give you, I'm not going to make it easy for you today. I'm going to give you a tough background to tell your story of why nobody wants to kill the Jews. Here we are. What's going on today in the world? We've got the modern day Persians here, the Iranians. They say, we want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. There's 6 million Jews in Israel. And at the same time, they're building nuclear weapons. And now it gets even better. The United States of America, the hero, the savior of the Jews, is now sanctioning the nuclear program in Iran. They're sanctioning, but not totally. They're saying, because they made a really good deal, they negotiated a good deal. So where they're saying now, you can build your nuclear, you can enrich uranium all the way up to 1 week before it becomes weapons grade. That's what scientists say. It's about 1 week to 10 days before it becomes weapons grade. Then you got to stop. You don't have to destroy any of it. And in return, what we're going to do, we're going to offer a tough deal. We're going to give you about $18 billion to go ahead and help you enrich your uranium. So that's our biggest, the biggest ally of the Jews, the U.S., is now sanctioning nuclear weapons-grade uranium 1 week away. At the same time, the West, after Israel gives away some of their land because they want to do the same, to help out the Palestinians, the next day rockets come on in there. They're launching into Israel every week to kill Jews. Now the Western world, including all of the left in the U.S., is saying, we need to boycott Israel because they don't want to give them more land to launch more rockets against them here. So I'm saying here, Rabbi Freeman, doesn't look that good here for you. Your argument is going to be a tough argument here. No one wants to kill the Jews anymore?
Well, it's possible. And I don't want to say no one wants to kill the Jews. No one wants to kill the Jews. But do people want to kill Jews? That much, I'll give you that.
You mean you're saying specific Jews, but not the Jews?
But the Jews. Now, there's a big difference here because Haman, in the Purim story, he wanted to kill the Jews. That means no you, no me, nobody, no Jews in Israel, no Jews in Persia, no Jews in L.A., no Jews. Right. A world free of Jews. Hitler, Yamach Shemo, wanted to kill the Jews. No Jews, nowhere. No Jews in L.A., no Jews in Russia, no Jews in Germany, no Jews in Israel. He wanted no Jews nowhere.
True.
Okay, now killing the Jews is a lot more grandiose. There are a lot of people that want to kill a lot of Jews. I mean, you got some guy that lives in some neighborhood and the Jewish store owner down the block is not selling him beer anymore because he ran up too high of a tab. He wants to kill the guy. Well, I understand that.
You don't think he wants to kill the Jews in general? You think he just wants to kill Shlomo?
Well, I think that there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of reasons for people to hate Jews. There's a lot of xenophobia. Jews are perpetual strangers. I understand that. People don't like strangers. Jews are perpetually involved in a lot of things that get a lot of people to hate them. But actually killing the Jews, that's a big deal, and that has only shown up 3 times in history.
Wow.
All of history.
You never went to high school with me, did you?
The problem was in your high school, they thought if they killed you, they killed all the Jews.
That's true, I was the only one. That's a good point. All right.
We'll get rid of him.
Point taken.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll have the whole Roanoke be Judenrein.
Right, exactly. Okay.
From one end of the Shenandoah Valley to the other.
Exactly. Clear of Jews.
And for most of those people, they didn't even know that there is very few of them have gotten up to the ridge to look over, so they don't know that there's anything else out there.
Right. That's a good point. Good point.
So, the 3 times in Jewish history, only 3 times this has happened. And every time that it happens, there's an interesting event going on, a subtext. And that's why right now it may or may not be happening. And I'm not saying it's not, but it might not be. Okay. So what's the subtext? The subtext is very simple. Israel. Okay. The land, that piece of real estate. Now, in truth, you could call it 4 times. But nationally, historically, it's been 3 times. There was one time that preceded that, and that was on an individual basis. There was a Jew named Jacob. Mm-hmm. Jacob had a brother, twin brother, Esau. Esau hates Jacob. Esau and Jacob, they're on a teeter-totter. Yep. Jacob's down, up, Esau's down. Jacob's down, Esau's up. They are total enemies of each other, and the two of them cannot both be up at the same time. So it's survival for Esau. To get up, he's got to bring Jacob down. And the biggest thing that he has to watch out for, if he wants to stay up, is he has to keep Jacob away from the land. Because if Jacob gets into the land, then Jacob becomes so powerful, because the connection between the Jew and the land that God designated for him, that he promised to them, is so powerful that it enables Jacob to be Jacob. See, Jacob can't really be Jacob when he's, away. When he's out in the field and he's running around and he's, not in his home field, it's bad. But when he gets home and he can settle in and he can set up his life up the way it's supposed to be, then that gives a tremendous power to Jacob. That being the case, Esau tries to prevent Jacob from getting into the land. First time that we see that they confronted was when Jacob is on his way back from having lived with Laban, and he's coming back into the land. Esau comes to confront him and intends to kill him. His plan is Jacob is not going to get into the land. He's going to be dead. It all works out, and they have a nice confrontation, and Esau mysteriously backs off, probably because of a fight with an angel or whatever, but without even getting into that, Esau backs off. Jacob goes into the land. Esau is kicking himself. Why did I let Jacob into the land? But luckily enough, Jacob leaves the land because his son Joseph goes down to Egypt, and before you know it, Jacob abandons Israel and moves down to Egypt, and all the children are end up getting enslaved in Egypt. They're out of the picture. Now, great. They're there. They're slaves. They're not going to be doing anything. That's great. The world is an Esau world. The only problem is all of a sudden there's this exodus from Egypt. The seas are splitting and the manna's falling and all this stuff. And they're heading back to Israel. Oops. Esau says, I've got to prevent this from happening. They get into Israel. They're going to set the whole world up the way they want it. It's not the way I want it. Bad news. And therefore, of all the countries of the world that had the temerity to actually attack the Jews, it was only one, Esau's descendant, Amalek.
Right.
Amalek attacks the Jews. When? When they're on their way to Israel.
So you're counting because it's Amalek, that's only one time.
That's right.
Ah.
That's the time. Okay. And when he had a chance to wipe them all out. Because the Jews were there. At that point, you had the Jews, they're in the desert, they're nowhere else. You didn't have any Jews in L.A., you didn't have any Jews in Europe. They're all right there, one spot. Amalek came, does war, tries to kill him. That was a chance to wipe them all out. Right? Even before that, when Jacob was going to be buried in Israel, Esau came and protested it. He tried to prevent Jacob from even being buried there because he knew that if he's buried there, then there's more connection between the land and all that. Tried to prevent him. What we see is, and we're going to watch and see throughout history, that whenever the Jews are on their way back to Israel, all of a sudden, Esau shows up and it's kill the Jews. Not kill Jews, but kill the Jews. Now, what is she saying, or he? Kill the Jews or Jews?
It just says kill Jews, I believe.
Kill Jews, yeah.
Kill Jews.
Okay. That's a garden variety anti-Semite. That's not necessarily Amalek.
He's not Amalek.
Right, because Amalek would say kill the Jews, meaning all of them. A garden variety anti-Semite says kill Jews. I don't like Jews. Okay, they don't like Jews. Some people don't like Jews. Some people don't like Hutus and Tutsis and, people don't like each other. Okay. Right. But kill the Jews? That you only find 2 times. And that is going back to Israel. So we've had one going back to Israel first. And when was that? That was when they first came to Israel, in the very first time. Right. That's when the nation of Amalek attacked. Right. The next time was when they were exiled to Babylon, which became Persia.
Right.
And then Cyrus the king said they could move back to Israel. During this period of time, when Cyrus said you can move back to Israel, and then he put like a freeze on the building settlements in Israel, when he did that, that's when Haman came along, and Haman said, I got to make my move right now and stop them from moving into Israel. And that's when Haman made his move, approached Achashverosh, said, I'll pay you a large sum of money. You hand it over to me. I've got all the Jews in the world under our control.
Right.
We can wipe them all out. And he picked the date, 13th of Adar, and all that stuff. So that was one chance to wipe them all out. And he said, this is my big chance. Now, really, if you turn the clock ahead to the next time the Jews were going to go back to Israel, you got to twist the clock all the way ahead to the 20th century.
So you're skipping the Inquisition. You're skipping obviously the Romans. They were there. The Greeks. They
If
were
you
there,
can
right?
believe this, I'm giving the Spanish a pass.
You're giving the Spanish
Ukrainians.
I was going to say the Ukrainians, the Russians,
you
the
name
Poles,
it. Right.
I mean, they're all getting
right.
a pass.
Right. All getting a pass.
Wow.
Even though they did horrible, horrible things, massacres and all that. But the one thing that all of those people wanted, even the Spanish Inquisition, they said the Jews got to leave. And expulsions is one thing. Expulsions, they're horrible. The expulsion from Spain was horrible. Thousands upon thousands of people died, uprooted an entire culture. The centuries, the Jewish people were reeling for centuries from that. However, they never said we want to kill all the Jews.
No.
They just said we don't want them in this Catholic country. This is a Catholic country. We don't want Jews here. You got to get out. Go somewhere else. I don't care where you go. Get out of here. And the Jews left. They went to other places. That was not kill the Jews. That was kill Jews. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't really even kill Jews. It was get rid of Jews.
Right.
And there have been a lot of other countries who've been really nasty along the way. And they wanted to get rid of Jews. Even the Tsar, the Tsar didn't hate Jews who didn't live in Russia.
Right. He just hated the Russians.
Jews who lived in Russia, he hated. And they had to be dealt with. Either get rid of them or have them become Christian, Greek or Russian Orthodox or whatever. But those had to be gotten rid of. He really didn't care about Jews in America, let's say, or England. You want them? You can have them. I don't like them here. I don't like them in my country. I want them out of here. If they want to leave, let them leave. He didn't mind them leaving.
So pogroms, that's just to get rid of them. Get them out of the country.
Get rid of them. We don't like them. They're smelly. Now, if you Americans, you stupid Americans, want to deal with Jews, you can have them. We want to get rid of them. Comes along Adolf Hitler, may his name be blotted out just like Haman. Adolf Hitler says, no, I got to get rid of all the Jews.
That's true.
And even though there were Jews in Russia, which was not advisable for him to go after, he needed to go after them. He even sent, and they actually have the communiques, you can read it, he even sent to his allies in Japan. He says, and it says basically, we're aware that there's a certain amount of Jewish refugees that have escaped they escaped Europe and have ended up in Asia. And, we're requesting as a good ally that, you round them all up and annihilate them. And, and they suggested how to go about doing that.
Right.
And thank God the Japanese didn't really follow up on that. But he wanted them to.
Right.
No, what does he care if they're in Japan?
True.
He cares because what was happening in the 20th century? The news of the 20th century was, at least in the Jewish world, the Jews are going back to Israel for the very first time.
Right, that's true.
The Jews are going back to Israel. It really was on world headlines. The English government had already made a statement that Jews have a right to a homeland. There was all this agitation, Jewish homeland. It was a national, international issue. And any good Amalek says, we got to stop it.
And we're saying that Hitler was Amalek.
I'm going to bet the mortgage on that one.
Okay. I'm going to make sure
Right.
that's on the table.
That's when I'm going to bet the mortgage on that one. Right.
All right.
And the real proof is that all anti-Semites will stop being anti-Semitical when it hurts them.
Yeah, obviously it did not. He was
But
using the trains at a bad time.
Amalek goes after the Jews to their own detriment.
Yeah, which he
Amalek says, I would rather not be alive than have Jews be alive.
Okay.
If I got to go down, taking the Jews down, I will do it. That's Amalek. Your garden variety anti-Semite doesn't say that.
No.
Your garden variety anti-Semite says, I want to get rid of the Jews. I think life will be better for me. I can take their money again. Who knows what, you know?
Right.
But the guy's not going to say, this is going to cost you your life to take out the Jews. Most anti-Semites will say, well, I don't know if I'm such an anti-Semite. I'm not such an orthodox anti-Semite.
Right. Maybe reform.
We'll reform about my anti-Semitism. Gotcha. They start to back off. Right? When it's not in their interest, they back off.
There's no doubt that the Nazis, especially at the end, were hurting themselves by taking the trains out of service that could be moving, material. They wanted to move the Jews.
Absolutely. Yeah. Working, they knew they had to do it. They were obsessed by doing it. It was the most important thing, and they thought this is the greatest thing they could do for the world, even to their own downfall.
True.
So that exhibits the classic sign of Amalek. And the reason is, like I said before, Esau and Jacob, they're on a teeter-totter. They can't both be up. And if they're the goal of one is to take out the other. In the Torah, it says that the goal of the Jews is to take out Amalek. God says that we're going to read it in this week's Torah portion as the second reading. We're going to fulfill that commandment to remember, never to forget, that we got to wipe out Amalek. Well, Amalek is never forgetting either. This got to wipe out the Jews.
Well, the problem is, and I understand the thing with Amalek, but you have, and obviously Arabs cannot be Amalek because they're obviously from Ishmael, so they can't be Amalek. But you just described the people, or could they be? Because you just described people who said who would give up their own life just to kill Jews.
Right. So it could very well be that there are people in the world now that are Amaleks. It could be. But I wonder, and I would hope, and it's a possibility, that maybe the last big push happened.
So you think we've wiped out Amalek?
And here's one factor that is very interesting to me. At this point, the largest community of Jews in the world is in Israel. Recently, there's the demographics, so no one knows exactly the day or anything like that. But according to most demographers, sometime recently, there are more Jews in Israel than there are in North America. Well, that happened sometime recently,
right.
And it's it's a snowball because it's going to be picking up as more and more Jews in America assimilate and drop out and intermarry and all that. The truth is, if you took a very strict definition of Jews based on conversion, Orthodox conversion or not, and all that type of stuff, you would probably find that a while ago, it's already the largest community of Jews in the world is in Israel. So in a certain way, I could say they're not going to prevent the Jews from going home. They already have.
But they obviously want to get the Jews out of their home, and that's pretty clear today in a lot of groups of people.
Yeah, maybe.
And I would say not just with the Arab people. I would say the people in Western Europe, everybody wants the Jews out of Israel.
Maybe, that's true. But it also maybe could be, and this is why I would prefer to have a more positive spin and a positive maybe.
Optimistic here, I can say.
That it could very well maybe be that that once the Jews have sort of made it home,
right?
And in many ways I see this now in the Jewish world. I see how Israel sort of sets the tone for what's going on. In the religious world, Israel very much sets the tone now. What's coming out of Israel, what they're saying in Israel, what they're doing in Israel, the scholarship, everyone sends their kids to study in Israel and all this type of stuff. It could be that they've already grabbed primacy, and if so, it's as though the Jews are back. And once they're back, and what Amalek knows is you can't let them go back, because once they go back and they hook up with the land, it gets to be too powerful. And it could be that we've already hooked up. We've already made it. Maybe. I want to be positive. I want to give it a good spin.
Well, that's a good spin. Well, so then the question is there a Amalek in the world today? And if so, who?
Yeah. Well, if we knew, we'd probably better off not knowing. because if you know, you have to wipe them out. And I don't know how we
that?
would be in such a position to go wipe them out. But yes, there probably is a Amalek around in the world. But is there going to be another Amalek, like a Haman or a Hitler, that will have the ability to marshal the forces of the world to actually go for an all-out attempt at annihilating the Jews worldwide? There's
a lot of contenders out there. I mean, you got the new guy in the Ukraine now. The news is on the Ukraine. I think the party that probably could come into power there is they've got themselves a fascist anti-Semite on top of that party.
Right.
We've got, some people would say a lot of people in the West there. You're worrying about even in our country and in the West. There's a lot of people out there that'd be good contenders. I don't know if they're Amalek, but they're definitely,
Yeah.
they might be farm team Amalek, but they're,
Right.
they're aiming.
And it is possible, I could be wrong, and it is possible that the more the Jews are back in Israel, the more it actually elicits anti-Semitism. It could be that
say so, yeah.
the closer the ties to Israel, the more it actually elicits a Amalek reaction. Because as long as they don't have them in Israel, they lay low. Okay, the Jews aren't in Israel. They're not much of a threat. Jews getting back to Israel, big threat. Got to do something about it. So it could actually be that Israel is eliciting a lot of this anti-Semitic Amalek type reaction, and maybe even from leaders all around the world. It's possible. It's possible. I'm also suggesting that maybe they have missed their opportunity.
That would be nice. I mean, but you even hear like today in the college campuses where it's not just, anti-Israel, but it's, you don't even belong there. Your homeland, go back to Poland, go back to whatever. You need to get out of Israel. You don't have any ties to this land. Go to Poland. And when you hear things like that, it kind of ties back to your own type reactions a little more.
People that say that that's a very Amalek type of thing, because you would think that what the world really should say is, you know what? All you Jews should go back to Israel. That's what the world should be saying. Get out of here.
You never hear that, do you?
We don't like you here. Go to Israel. That's what you'd think people would say.
Right.
What are you doing here? Go back to Israel where you belong. But they don't say go back to Israel where you belong. They say go back to like Poland. Why not Israel? That's an Amalek type of reaction.
And it seems to be, maybe even unknowingly among the people saying this, it seems to be the most common thing we hear these days. I mean, from lots of different people. So I wonder. I know you're very optimistic, and I think it's a great way to be.
I'm in the Purim spirit. I want to be positive, and I want to say like it happened, and we made it. We made it. 6 million people. That was quite a price to pay. 6 million is huge, and the subsequent, I guess you'd call it, spiritual Holocaust that has followed. That's a pretty big price to pay. Nonetheless, I remain optimistic that it's not about anti-Semitism, it's about Amalekism, and Amalekism is about Jews going back to Israel, and the Jews have and are going back to Israel. And as a matter of fact, it's an interesting thing. I was just talking to someone who was who's at a basketball game, and there was a bunch of Jewish kids, visibly Jewish. They were from the day school that my kids went to, and they're all sitting there, and they got their kippahs on, and a Frenchman, came over to them. He says he spent his whole life in France. He says, just want you to know how amazing it is, because in France anymore, you can't see like a group of kids like that could go out to a game and just sit with kippahs on. They wouldn't be able to do that, to go and sit in public.
They would be harassed, you mean?
Yeah,
oh,
right.
Wow.
They wouldn't.
Wow.
You wouldn't see that if you went to a game or a public place. You wouldn't see like a group of kids like sitting together with kippahs on. And he told one of the adult chaperones that was with him like how nice it was to see that and how well the kids were behaved and all that type of stuff. Well, at the same time, if you go to Israel right now, you'll find that there's a lot of French being spoken in Israel.
Right.
You know why? Because these people are they're all going buying apartments in Israel because the things are getting pretty nasty over there in France. So actually what's happening, all of this anti-Semitism, all this like pro-Muslim stuff, which is a lot of anti-Jewish stuff, is actually even speeding up the process of sending more Jews back to Israel. Argentina, another one.
Well, that being said, though, I mean, again, not to step on your parade here a little bit, but don't you think it's an odd situation that, like, in America today, that politically, I don't like to get political, but politically, that the biggest argument about in the Middle East is not, will Iran get nuclear weapons? We've given them a week before they're allowed to do it. Whether the Muslim Brotherhood's going to take over in Egypt, what's going to happen in Syria, but that we have to make sure nobody builds any more apartments in the capital of Israel. We have to make sure that no matter what the cost, that we, even though on the other side you have Hamas over here, we have to make sure that Hamas and everybody has the right to go over here, and the Jews can't have their settlements and things like that. It's an odd thing. I mean, there's so many different arguments, so many things you can talk about when we talk about Middle East peace. The only thing we care about here is the Jews stop building.
That's right. And I understand it. And I understand that there's still that residual. They're still lashing around and all that. But I think that is the residual effects of the Haman-ism. They're still like flailing about.
Big residual there. I mean,
flailing
that's our
about.
Entire policy.
But is there going to be another round where someone in the world is going to try to annihilate the Jews? So I remain optimistic that is not going to happen again. And what we have is the residual effects of this Haman-ism, Amalek-ism that's around, and we're suffering with that, no doubt about it. And I'm not saying the Jews are out of the woods, and I'm not saying that every Jew in the world is safe. Far from it. There's a lot of hatred, a lot of anti-Semitism. I will point out that a lot of that anti-Semitism is actually motivating more Jews to go back to Israel. And in previous times, when they got rid of the Jews had to wander on to the next spot. I think now every Jew in the back of their mind, every Jew in the world in the back of their mind said, if things go bad, I'm off to Israel. I'm off to Israel. It's very interesting. Big game changer. Big game changer.
So bottom line, you're saying we probably shouldn't give away half of Jerusalem right now. It's not the time to do it.
No, probably shouldn't. Yeah. Probably shouldn't. And I do think that this idea that like there's a lot of this talk about Zionism, is Zionism or Israel equals the Jews. It's also a good development because for a long time the Zionists themselves tried to identify Israel as something distinct from Judaism. And they wanted Israel to be distinct from Judaism. Like, Israel is a country. Judaism is a religion.
Right.
The rest of the world never bought that. The rest of the world says, Israel, Jews. Israel's are Jews. And Jews are a religion, and Israel's the Jewish place. And the rest of the world is buying that. And I think now the Jews are also coming, especially anti-Semitism, even more promotes that link between Israel and Jews and that Jewish identity.
You should thank the people in my junior class then. In high school, then. They served a very good purpose.
That's right.
They always knew the Israel and Jews were the same thing. They told me that every day.
That's right. That's right. They know it. They know it. We tried to duck it. No, it's Israel. It's a country. And that's what's happening even on campus. All of this hatred, this anti-Israel stuff, is really forcing Jews to be Jews.
Well, that's good. Okay.
It's really interesting how Israel is a factor for bringing out the Jewishness in people. And so if you look at it from a Torah perspective, that's what Israel was always supposed to do in the first place. Bring out the Jewishness in the Jew.
Well, leave it to Rabbi Friedman. He's got the positive side on everything. There's always a positive side.
I didn't even start drinking yet.
Right.
Give me a few more days. Come back to me on Sunday, man.
Right.
It's going to be good
Big
times.
Big difference. All right. Well,
good times.
I feel good now. We're loved. The Jews, the most loved people in the world.
They love us. They love us.
They really do. Awesome. Well, this is a good topic. This is one that people should probably talk about a little bit here. I like it. I like where it went. For everybody else, happy Purim.
Yes.
All right. See you next week.